Hi, I'm Jerome, residence expert at LTASEX.info. Welcome to LTASEX Live, the show where we talk to sexy people about sexy stuff. Today I have on Shine, Jisley, and my co-host today is Tyra from LTASEX. This is the first episode of LTASEX Live. You mostly have seen these sorts of things as a part of Let's Talk About Sex. We're breaking them out into a separate show now to give you a bit more of a personalized feel. I hope you guys really like it, and I hope this episode goes great because it's sort of an experiment, so play along with us. So first, before we really get into things today, we are going to be talking about queer stuff. It is Queer Sex Month on LTASEX. So today we're just going to be talking about queer, what it is to be queer, what it means to be queer, how we've experienced it, how we've learned it, all that sort of stuff. Now, before we get into things, let's introduce ourselves. Let's start with Jiz.
Hi, I'm Jisley. I identify as genderqueer, and my preferred pronouns are they, them. And I work here with Louise Houston for Pink and White Productions. I'm the online marketing director, and I'm happy to be here.
Sweet.
Happy to have you.
I'm Louise Houston. Oh my God! Coffee for 3 days. Anyway, I'm Louise Houston. I founder, co-founder, however you want to say it, of Pink and White Productions. One of the 3 partners for the business. I make porn. We run Crash Pad series. We just started PinkLabel.tv, which is our online distribution branch.
All right.
Yeah, and pronouns is kind of like the free-for-all, either way.
All right. For the first time, you guys are actually meeting one of our LTS experts, Tyra. She actually wrote the review for one of the oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name.
The Crash Pad series episodes.
Thank you. Crash Pad series episodes that we have on the site right now. You guys can check that out. But Tyra, first introduce yourself and tell a little bit why you're actually on LTASEX.
Oh, okay. I'm Kytara, like Jerome said, one of the resident experts. I write for the blog. I started around last summer, in the summer. I'm here to talk about, femme realness and fat positivity and all the good stuff in food and sex.
Of course.
My pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Perfect. So let's get into the topic today. I'm going to start sort of, I guess you could say, broadly. I'm just going to ask, what does queer mean to you guys? You folks, you people, you thems.
Jiz, you want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I identify as queer, so I'm going to be coming from a really personal place of what it means for me and my identity, which, on the one hand, a lot of my lovers have different sexual orientations and different genders. And for myself, I have maybe not a clearly defined gender, and sometimes I can hook up with people and maybe not even assume I know what gender they are, right? So, or just acknowledging that gender can be fluid, which makes me so for me, queer is a great word because it can encompass a lot of different kinds of gender and sexuality, even in someone's different place of how they identify in that way. When I see LGBT, I think I'm not any of those. I'm not a lesbian, I'm not gay, I'm not trans, I'm not bisexual. If there's a Q at the end, often that Q is for questioning. So right. Sure, I'm questioning. I guess I'm questioning all of it all the time. But so queer for me kind of can be this place where it allows me to be sexually active and healthy and happy wherever I am in that spectrum at any given time. And we make queer porn, and the reason we call the porn queer specifically, I think, is because it also, the performers that we feature are also at different points in expressions and gender sexuality, right? And so we couldn't call it lesbian porn because we have trans men. Sometimes we have cisgender men on the site. Sometimes we have people who are bisexual, they don't identify as lesbian. Genderqueer people don't identify as lesbian. So by saying queer, it's an umbrella term that can include everyone.
Here, here.
You know, that's for me, that's one of the things I really love about queer. I identify as gay for the most part because that's just like a closer or an easier way for people to understand what partners they may see me with at any random time. But I like the identity of queer better for myself, because I recognize that although for the most part I only date men who also identify as homosexual or gay, I may date a woman at some point. I may date a trans person at some point. I may date somebody who has no gender at all, and that is not exactly all encompassed by the word gay. But for the time being, it's just sort of what I'm going with.
I think sometimes people hear queer and they think homosexual immediately. There's a great Mickey Mott, who's a performer on the site, and a friend had this great response to someone who left him a comment and was kind of like, "Oh, you're so hot, it's too bad you're queer." And he was like, "Wow, it's too bad you don't know what queer means."
Totally. I think the colloquial use of queer has shifted, and queer definitely was a gay man for a long time, and you queer, 50s, 60s, that is the word queer. It was, I think it's interesting how, through gay liberation movement and all that kind of stuff, and taking back the word queer and faggot as words to describe yourself, and taking back the pink triangle and all that kind of good stuff. But I think there's been a really interesting radical shift in the colloquial use of queer because of the popularization of certain veins of queer theory, which, in a nutshell is basically a way of subverting the dominant, the dominant
status quo.
Yeah, and the status quo, but particularly about power. It's really subverting that power structure. And it's very interesting because I've also had, gay people, dykes, lesbian gays, just be like, you can't use the word queer. Everybody's using the word queer because now it means, even straight people are queer. And I'm like, yeah.
But isn't that sort of a good thing, though? Don't we want people to feel unified and together?
It's really interesting, but I think when you've lived at a time where gay culture is yours, you know what I mean, and it's a safe enclave, and other people are now coming into that community, I can understand why people are really, no, you can't come into this club. Really? You're a cisgendered, you have cisgendered couples, you're queer? I can understand why people bristle a little bit about that, but I really like queer because it is so subversive, and it shows that sexuality isn't natural. There's nothing is inherently natural about sexuality and sexual desire, and I think that's the best thing about queer.
Yeah. That's definitely true. So you didn't even get a chance to speak to her. We kept talking.
Sorry.
So go ahead, share your queer identity, queer experience.
My journey has been evolved since I was a little bisexual baby in middle school, and I was looking at naked girls on the internet. It turned into pansexual when I was in college, and I found out the word. I heard my friends using the word queer, and I'm like, what's that? And then I'm doing more research, and I'm like, this fits so much better because sexuality, gender is fluid, and I understand that. So I want to leave myself open to all the forms and possibilities of sex and love. And I don't want to limit myself into thinking, to thinking in a binary, basically. And so I'm a complicated person, and people are complicated and complex, and thus sex and relationships are that as well. So it would behoove me to have a label that is just complex as I am.
I love that behoove. And I think that's an important thing to talk about, is the complexity of humans. A lot of times when we're writing humans and looking at humans on TV or doing anything where we're sort of trying to recreate reality, we tend to make these very like one-sided pictures of what life is, what people are, the sort of like dynamics of the emotional range. And I think that really sort of limits our view of one another in a lot of ways. And I enjoy queer for the reason that it forces you to not have a mode. Because when someone says queer, they can mean so many things that you can't just automatically jump to any one conclusion. Let's go back to let's get back to talking with Jiz and Shine with that sort of complexity thing. Did you have anything to say from there?
I think now popular, I think that's kind of a given that, you know, people understand that sexuality. Well, with some people, not a scene, but like, well, you know, I live in San Francisco. I live in a bubble. There are a lot of places where, like, you know, there is still that thing, you know, masculinity is naturally on male bodies and femininity is naturally on feminine bodies, and that's not necessarily so. But yeah, no, it's complicated. But you know, at the same time, it's just anyway, blah blah blah. Putting in my trying to arrange all the thoughts because there's way too much information about all that stuff.
Talking about the word fluid. Do you want to talk about that? Because I hold strongly to the idea of sexuality being fluid, and I also like it because fluids, you know, like bodily fluids.
Yeah.
Those are important.
So how would you describe sex? Fluids.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the sex act, that's one thing. You can change like how you want to have sex or the act of sex, but when you're talking about your sexuality or your sexual desire, I feel like there's not this huge range. I feel like, you know, you can, you know, I think people can shift a little bit, but I don't think there's, looking at myself and looking at other people and like the partners that they pick, there's not much fluidity and movement, you know what I mean? And like,
so you're saying sexuality is a rhombus.
A rhizome. It's a rhizome.
It's very oblong, I would say.
Right. So sexuality is more of a rhizome. It has paths that you can go on. You know, there's social paths. You know, there's your subculture, the way you've brought up, and things that have influenced your sexuality. They really do kind of shape where your sexuality can go. I don't think it's as free as just saying that it's a fluid. And you know, my thing, like, well, is it fluid like in a bucket? Like, is it fluid like in an ocean? Is it fluid like in pipes? You know, what type of
is it a gas, a solid, a liquid?
I'm as queer as an ocean.
Yeah. You know, and I think, you know, if there's, I'm not saying that people don't change or change their partners or their desires grow over time. I'm just saying that there's a certain structure that those desires grow in.
Mm-hmm. Do you think maybe we're romanticizing the open-mindedness that's saying fluid, or saying that sexuality is really,
yeah, I think it's like
that we're saying like that the possibilities are like that kind of possibility romanticism.
It is. I think it's like the same type of romanticism as like in the 70s, like free love. You know, it's a lot of work. Love is a lot of work.
That is a lot of work. Yeah, yeah. But I think it's good in a way. I think it's sort of good to, I guess, make the idea of the possibility of changes and being dynamic seem normal and positive. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing. It's definitely normal. I'm just saying that there's limits.
Yeah, like, cause in that context of like, oh, that anything is possible in your own personal journey, that's great. But then people might not be that open to change, or saying that people, like, having people force that, like, oh, your sexuality is fluid, it will change back and forth, especially if you're growing up as like a gay kid and someone say, oh, this is just a phase and you'll get out of it. Like, some people are very strong in their identity, and that's like, so I don't want to like put that label like on someone saying like, oh, you're fluid.
Right.
Yeah. Rhombus makes sense to me because, sorry, rhizome.
Rhizome.
Why do I keep on saying rhombus?
I don't know.
Like,
rhizome.
Rhombus. That way?
I don't know.
Yeah. Rhizome makes sense. Like, it almost, you can kind of see an evolutionary pattern where you have one experience and it
that
leads to this,
it leads to that, and it grows, and maybe you can connect back to that later, and then it becomes something else.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just my soapbox.
It's the circle of queer.
Yeah.
So, actually, that's a good place to ask, though. Where did you two start your circle of queer?
Okay. I think my circle of queer starts really, really early. Being a little kid, you know, my mom was very much like to, you know, do my hair, especially going to church. Do my hair. I get hot combed every Sunday. Patent leather shoes, little tiny suit, like, you know, nice frilly dresses. Everything was very cute, cute, cute. And, whoo, bless you. And then, for whatever reason, I had spent a year with my grandma, and so I must be, this is like before first grade? I don't know, this is kindergarten, first grade, something like this. And I got introduced to sneakers, jeans, and t-shirts, because before that my mother would only dress me in dresses, and as soon as I had the option for sneakers and jeans and t-shirts, you couldn't get me out. And at that point, you know, it's just like I wanted to wear boys' clothes, I wanted boys' bikes, because all boys' stuff was cooler and better. And then, you know, over time, you know, there's like social pressure, so it's like I was a little bit more girly, like through like elementary school and stuff. But then by the time I got to high school and really realized that I like girls, then, you know, I was looking more into like gay culture, and it was like, you know, early 90s, so andro was in, so I was really, you know, not really a girl, not really a boy, and, you know, and that kind of worked, and it was, you know, and everybody else was pretty much andro, so it's just like there was this notion in my mind that, you know, I don't want somebody who's super feminine, I don't want like masculine, I don't want male, I want this like kind of androgynous. That was where I thought like my desire was, and that's what my identity was as well. And things changed by the time I got to San Francisco, because in the 93, 94 was when like the real big resurgence of butch femme was happening. And, you know, and this has been my journey of like where I am with masculinity. Because when I first got here, it's just like, you're either butch or you femme. And I was like, well, I'm going to be on the butch side. But at that time, like, the culture of masculinity was very, very, very macho. And I didn't really fit in with being butch like that. And then I kind of met somebody who was like, well, masculinity, like, you can identify as a fag. And so I had my fag years, you know, where I went out with other butches and I was a fag, and I thought like, then I was really much into like, oh, I'm really into this masculine image, and this is where my desire is. Until one night I went to a party and wound up dancing with this girl, and the only thing I remember is like big hoop earrings and lipstick and cleavage. And I realized that I liked feminine girls, and for me that was like,
that was the cleavage that did you in.
It was the cleavage. It really was a whole new world.
That's what breasts do to you.
It was like oh, and then I went through my teenage boy years. So and so it's been like that, kind of like understanding like really where I am with my own masculinity, and like where I am with like my own desire, and like how, you know, just what it is, and picking apart everything that I had grown up with, and picking apart like social pressures and everything, and just being like, oh, I like this on me, and I like that on you, especially like heels, femi stuff. I realized that's it, and I don't think there's much more room for me to go anywhere else right now. I feel like that I hit it. That's it.
That's what you want. That's where you're gonna go. Jiz, want to tell your story?
Oh gosh.
Just a long tell.
Long, and yeah, it's a long tell. And then even trying to shorten it becomes, it's like almost harder to shorten it. But I mean, if anything, I know that I'm still in a process. I feel like I'm never going to be done. you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if I imagine, I got asked the question recently, like, how do I see my sexuality in the next 30 years? And I think it was 20 years. So basically, like, when I'm 50, 60, what is my sexuality going to be like? And I have this vague idea of what I might be like. I mean, I'm really excited about having silver hair, and I've heard that you really grow into your body, and you know, you're really, and you know, I've heard that sex gets really great when you're older. So I hope that I can be that silver fox. Like, I hope I want to be doing it then, and being able to, like, you know, to show my wrinkles and to be sexual and handsome and older with silver hair, and really loving all the sensations and feelings, and know how to, you know, be the peak or the pinnacle of my ability to love her. Yeah, myself as well. But who knows? And I think that kind of process has been with me now and will always be with me. I've yo-yoed all over the place. In terms of gender, grew up really tomboy. I would say nature kind of gave me my tomboyish thing. I wish some people would be like, you don't have to be a tomboy to be outside in nature all the time, or surfing and like hiking around and stuff. But for the most part, most of my friends were men, young boys, like just building tree forts and getting lost in the woods, and and waking up in the morning to go surfing after a party, and just kind of like being one of the guys. So I feel like I kind of had that tomboyish mentality, although definitely coming to San Francisco and having like a very strong butch femme stuff, it was like you had to be one or the other, and I really didn't feel like super butch. I felt like posing a bit to try to, you know, be like, well, I'm wearing the baggy jeans and the white shirt, and you know, all my friends were butch, and then later on, a lot of them transitioned to be trans guys, and I thought, well, maybe that's me too, because like that feels more comfortable than it felt like drag to wear feminine clothing. So then anyway, then I found a zine that said gender fuck on it, and it was kind of this light bulb when I realized that, oh, I can just be who I am. And then I've been using genderqueer use a bunch, and that was kind of where it went. Pronoun-wise, I kind of had always liked nothing, and I mean, if it's hard linguistically to like write or speak using they and them pronouns, it's even harder to not use any pronouns at all. A lot of people were using they and them, and I read this great article about singular they, which was like used in English before like the default he kind of went into place, and then later on the PC, you know, a child, he/she, you know, kind of vernacularly trying to write like that. So I understand that it's tricky and it doesn't flow off the tongue, but language, maybe language is fluid. I don't know. Maybe language is
language definitely
right, Germanic language is definitely so. But if it does become easier to use they and them, I don't know. So that's kind of how our society talks about gender.
So you're still on a journey with your queer sexuality. Are you still on a journey with, say, how you're expressing that sort of queerness in your porn?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the porn continues to be a reflection of like everything I'm exploring, things I'm comfortable with and feel sexually excited about, my interests, and gender also. I know that I think some of the beginning works that is, and I was more interested in kind of trying to play with like gender fuckery. I'm thinking specifically of Super Freak.
Right.
Yeah, where like you asked me like, hey, would you want to play a femme character? And so I told it was like, yeah, and I had a lot of fun with that. And I think as I continue to do porn, I kind of feel like maybe I got lazy. I don't know. I want to be like I want to be neutral or find that neutrality. Yeah. But I mean, as a director, probably like you explore gender. I mean, Heavenly Spire is a pretty interesting example of that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in what you're interested in filming.
That's true.
Who?
Care to talk about that?
Yeah. So with Crash Pad, I think, like I said, it's kind of its own machine. It's its own thing. It has its own life. I try to keep up with it, and I think since mostly what I've built for Crash Pad series is it's more like a container that you can, if you watch all the episodes, you can actually watch the shift in queer culture. It's like historical documentation of what's been going on in the community for like the last 7 years. Do you know what I mean? You can watch, you know, the styles, how people are having sex, what's popular in having sex, what's popular in, like, you know, just people's bodies and representations, and like more people are feeling okay to apply. So all, you know, it's just like you see the shifts, you see the currents in the culture with who applies and who's coming onto the site. Conversely, Heavenly Spire is more of a personal project, because I had never worked with cisgendered men or worked specifically with masculinity, and also it was in a weird sort of way getting over, I guess, like, or working through my fear of the boys club. Because I, you know, for the most part, like, I've always had a desire to be a part of the boys club, but, you know, always kind of like socially like, and no, you're not a part of that world. Like, okay. So part of it was just like getting, kind of like peeking in on that world. Well, what is this, and what is male sexuality? I don't have much of like, I don't really understand like the visual landscape or the sexual landscape of like male sexuality. And I think one of the most interesting experiences that I had while shooting Heavenly Spire was, now this happened within a single day. We had 2 shoots. This happened within a single day. First guy was a cis guy, and you know, we do the interview, and then after that we get naked, do the pretty shots, and then it's a solo scene. And so it was really funny because, like, as soon as he took his underpants off, he was just like flapping around, jump up and down, wiggle it, you know. It was just like, you know, feeling free. And I think so the next gentleman that we had on the site was a trans guy, and he was, you know, he was packing. He had on you know, like a strap-on, pretty good size one, and it was kind of like the same thing. After we did the interview, he got naked and everything. The first thing he did, as soon as like he took his dick out of his pants, was like flap it around, you know, bounce it around.
It's fun.
Like the same thing. I was like, look, look. It just totally spoke for itself. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it was just a good moment for me.
So let's talk about one more thing before we get going, because we have actually been on for close to an hour now. I know, we can't believe we're close to the end. So I just sort of wanted to talk about queerness and race. I know for myself, being an African American person from the Midwest, it is very, very, very difficult. I would say much more difficult than a lot of other cultures to even be queer at all, explore queerness, even if that just means gay, not even sort of like gender queer at all. And I find that, of course, sad, but I also find it worth discussing. Maybe how we can help, or just sort of discussing what that means for, you know, people like us, fellow minorities who are struggling in a world that's mostly printed with, you know, the vision of whiteness as being the only queer.
Right. I mean, which totally makes me think of Marlon Riggs' Tongues Untied. You know, with the whole, like, you know, even through the 80s, growing up, it's just like queer culture is white culture, and there is no black queer culture, there is no black lesbian culture, which there is, but, you know, it's so underground that it was hard for me to find it in Oakland. You know, and even when I did find it, for me it was like very hard to penetrate that little tiny enclave.
Yeah, I would imagine.
You know, so it was and I feel like, you know, this is part of a much larger systemic issue, which I'm going to take this tangent there's a much larger piece. But like, if you want to talk about like, once you hit college, I feel like there's a lot more opportunities just for opening your mind to a lot of things, not just, you know, your classes and all this stuff, but meeting different people and having different discussions. And I feel like it's also a weird class and economic opportunity issue that people of color rarely get this experience. I feel like I'm lucky to have gotten this experience in college. I mean, I have $70,000 worth of debt now because of it, but
120.
Oh, awesome. But I just feel like, you know, the ratios of people of color going into higher learning, you know, it's still imbalanced. It's still totally imbalanced. Like the opportunities of like going into fields of, say, like rhetoric or philosophy or things like this. There aren't too many black people who are getting into these fields, and I think this is where radicalism like really happens, like where people really have the opportunity to shake up those ideas and then bring that to their community and bring that to their friends, and that just doesn't happen so much. And I feel like, you know, this is part of a systemic issue of, you know, an economic imbalance, education imbalance, and then it just kind of rolls over naturally into like the sexual culture of, you know, the Black community. And also just, you know, specifically talking about my dad's side of the family, you just don't talk about anything. From a personal level, like, you know, they are like upper middle class New York, and you just don't talk. You don't talk too much about your feelings. You certainly don't talk about like being gay or anything like this. And I don't really have much contact with that side of my family. My other side of the family, they're Southern California and they're kind of crazy. So they're cool. But yeah, I just feel like there are two forces at work, you know, kind of like a cultural thing of just like being very private about stuff, and also a socioeconomic situation of just like not at the same type of opportunities of wrestling with these other philosophical issues.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? When you sort of look at it that way, it sort of feels like it becomes a bit of a luxury to have time to think,
yes,
or be in a place where you can even like explore your mind.
Exactly. That's the thing. It is a luxury, and it's a luxury that, you know, lower economic people don't get. I don't care if you're like white or black or trailer trash or anything you want to say like this. Those people also don't get that opportunity. It's a class. It's very much a class issue. And like if you look at the history of, you know, Kiki women and butch femme women, this is the same thing that was going on with like the feminist revolution and everything. There was that class schism, you know, between working class, butch and femme, and like these other college lesbians, you know, who are more theoretical about like how they were expressing their lesbianism and like their feminism. Like this, you know, it's still there. This weird class divide and education divide, and you know, it's still prevalent. And I think, you know, anyway, I think that that results in a lot of things that spin down to a lot of decisions that the company makes. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, and I want to also, of course, explore with Jiz a little bit, because one, being an African American, we do actually have a lot more of a voice when it comes to issues of queerness and sort of like expressing things in sort of the mainstream. And I personally have never really talked with anyone who is of any sort of Asian American descent. And I would like to know from maybe your perspective, if you have anything to share, about what queerness or being queer, developing queer is like from your background.
Mm-hmm. And I use the word hapa because I feel like that more closely relates to my experience growing up in Hawaii and the different intersecting cultures and community and that whole history there. So I use hapa as the word. And so my head is actually still on kind of along the lines of what Shine was saying, and I get really excited when technology becomes accessible. Mm-hmm. And so while you're talking about, you know, and it is also technology access as class definitely, without a doubt. I also feel like it's becoming more readily accessible. It's becoming cheaper.
Yeah.
It's easier to get to, and I think that in some ways the internet is becoming a classroom for talking about for bringing the ideas that happen in college and those kinds of think pieces and the circles of communications, like the blog rolls, and like, you know, they kind of become their own syllabus and their own, you know. I think that the work that you're doing, you know, because you went to film school and have this access and ability to create a company that reflects queer sexuality, that is less homogenous than a lot of other porn. So we have people of different genders and different, you know, racial backgrounds, ethnicities, being able to be expressed in a way that shows them as being desirable and capable of a healthy sexuality. And, you know, I mean, even just being an object of desire is so, to be able to be seen as an object of desire is
can be a good
kind
thing.
of, I mean, it can be life-changing.
I understand.
I've gotten fan letters, I guess if you want to call it that, people from my community who, like, porn has changed their life. Being able to see someone who they resonate with as a sexual being and happy, you know? Yeah. So, yeah,
and that's so important. People like to underestimate the ability of having a good example. And oftentimes when we're talking about diversity and things, we do tend to stop at, you know, either black or white, and then maybe sometimes Latino. And I think it's really important to remember that there are other cultures out there. There are other skin tones in the area in between that also need to show up on TV and in radio and in porn and in movies.
And I mean, and one of the reasons why I value Crash Bed so much is because the kinds of ways that we're represented are not necessarily we're not being placed into a script that can be problematic and stereotypical to be able to put on a box that's like marketed like this to these people who want to see that kind of marketing. It's basically we're able to collaborate and create our own scripts. And so, you know, Shine works directly with former SoFi performer working on her site. I'm going to be like, here's these ideas that I have in a way that makes me feel excited about doing this kind of sex, whether it's role playing or what. Talk about that, make sure everyone's like on the same page and cool about it, and it's consensual, and then we're good to go. And so we're able to write our own scripts and present our own fantasies, as opposed to, I mean, I've turned down a lot of roles where it's like they want me to be this certain kind of, which I feel like I don't really fit that Asian role anyway. I'm like, me? Like, there's not 500 more girls in porn who could do that role for you if they want to, because I don't want to. I don't want to.
I don't want to do it. No.
Yeah, it's really too bad Betty's not on the site. She recently had an experience where she was put on a box cover and billed as Latina because I guess she's lighter skinned, or her hair, the way it was looking. I don't know. They basically, you know, it's got to be like, tell your image, and basically give them the right to do whatever they want to do with your image. And so part of the reason why I'm so picky, I guess, is because I want to make sure I work with people who I feel like they're going to put my image out there in a way that I agree with. And that's the way I do porn. A lot of people have looser boundaries, don't care as much, a little different, and so your image goes out there, and that's how it's that's how the dice roll. So, but yeah, like I don't know. I guess that's why I'm picky, because I definitely want to agree to porn scripts that are more representative of my own sexual desire. And I don't know. I don't feel like I fit well into other people's idea of what that looks like. So
I don't believe anybody fits well into anybody's idea.
It is more fun, yeah.
Like you don't want to.
That's true. All right, so that's gonna bring us to the end of our show today. I want to thank both Jiz and Shine for being on the show. It was wonderful to have you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Good discussion.
Now, before we get going, of course, we need to let you pimp all of your wares. Tell people where they can find your stuff, where they can spend their money, where they can support their independent queer porn companies.
Check out our new company hoodie.
Now, can you actually see the numbers? Yeah.
Wait, that's the IP address?
64.69.97.102. Holler.
So that's Crash Pad Series. You should definitely become a member.
Yes, you should.
Over what is it? Over 100 episodes? Over 150 episodes?
166, I think.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we're at 166 episodes. Also, check out pinklabel.tv. That is our new distribution channel. So we're basically handpicking all the people that we think are making amazing work and definitely need to make more money off their work. So if you patron Pink Label TV, the directors, the people who make it, get 40% of the revenue. So we do a big revenue share with them. So yeah, and what else?
Heavenly Spire that we were talking
Spire.
about, that's on Pink Label TV.
That's on Pink Label. Some Crash Pad stuff is on Pink Label. We've got Cheryl Dunye. We've got
Nina Joyner.
And just like
Toby Hillmeyer.
Yes, lots of people.
Yeah.
Lots of people support, so we can have more people on there. Yeah.
All right. Oh, and we will also be having a couple more Crash Pad reviews going up soon.
Yay. Awesome.
So you can check those out. And I want to thank everyone so much for watching today, the very first episode of Let's Talk About Sex Live. I'm excited to see what comes out after editing. We shall see. But I think it'll be great. Thanks so much for coming by today.
Awesome.
Until next time, I'm still Jerome, here with Kytara Epps.
Hi.
And as always, keep it sexy.
All right.
Peace.